We are back for our third annual Lacrosse season preview show. We had Coach Tillman 2 years ago. We had the traitor last year.
Eric Molliver left us.
Eric Molliver left, went to Duke.
Of all places, the shame.
Duke of all places. And now this year, Eric Spanos, who was looking at his history, he didn't play a lot as a freshman, maybe not at all. Started getting the games as a sophomore, was a starter as a junior. Towards the end of the year, really started coming on, had a great game against Virginia in the semifinal. And now is going to be one of the leaders of the team, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think he's going to have to be. I think it's one of those situations where you lose. He really is the last player. He redshirted that 2022 season where they won the national championship. So, he's kind of that last link now between that title team and what's going on now. So has the experience, has seen it, has learned from a lot of the best players in the history of the program.
I got to see the semifinal game. As you know, we had what kind of time do we have? I was trying to think of a good word for it. It was a memorable evening.
It was eclectic.
Okay. It was eclectic in Philadelphia the night before the semifinal. And then they absolutely destroyed Virginia. And it was awesome because I was next to there's a section where all the family sits. And you were up in the box.
Yep.
And I was across the stairs on this other section, like right next to them. But there were a lot of UVA people there too. And there was this one kid, I think he was in high school. And every time something happened, he wouldn't cheer for UVA. He would just ridicule Maryland or put down Maryland. There was one play where Maryland, a guy was coming from behind from the X.
There you go.
And try to wrap around.
Yep.
And could have easily scored and didn't. He kind of fumbled it and missed it. And I don't remember who it was, but he goes, you can't even make that. Those are the kind of things he was saying. It wasn't like, yes, go Virginia. Yes, we scored. That's cool. You're supporting your team. When you do this other stuff, it's like, dude,
yeah.
How old, what kind of brain do you have? This is what way you react. And it was so gratifying. Maryland within minutes we're up, what was it, 5-0 within the first.
Yeah.
And just pummeled him, and he sat there silent the rest of the time. And it was
okay. So Larry, I'm noticing
glorious.
a common theme though. When we were at the UVA football game this past season, we had that fan sitting behind us from UVA that did nothing but yell and scream whenever Maryland didn't do something well.
That's true. I forgot about that.
I know. I just had flashbacks to that guy yelling crab cakes every time Maryland didn't do.
Yeah, he yelled crab cakes because he thought that was such an insult.
Yeah, the strangest thing I know.
Okay. All right.
One thing people don't know about Larry doesn't like sitting in the box. He doesn't like being up in the press box.
I did sit with you for a half, but
you did, but you were like, I can't do it. Because
I want to be in the action.
I know, you want to get the vibe. You want to go down and be in the stands and let loose and have fun and experience it.
Well, the suites are good. I like suites because you're with people and you're still experiencing the game, and you can walk out and there's seats in front of the suite and you can walk out and still get the vibe and there's people around you. But the press box, there's no cheering in the press box.
No.
Come on, man.
Not allowed to.
Come on, man.
In fact, at the championship game against Notre Dame last year, there was a guy from I think it was Barstool. And when things started to go south in the title game for Maryland, this guy kept yelling about, maybe it's in your iPad, Tillman, maybe it's in your iPad. And finally, I actually said something in the press box. I was like, I couldn't see him. I must have been a good 15 yards from him because those press boxes are pretty long. And I was just like, yeah, it wasn't funny the first time, knock it off. And they were all like, well. But it was funny because, normally in those situations, the people that are hosting the events are pretty clear about what they think is etiquette. And so the fact that no one from the NCAA or no one from, the Lincoln Financial Field was kind of saying anything to this guy who was clearly also inebriated. The fact that they weren't saying anything to him, I finally was like, I can't take it. So I said something. You know me, Larry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if that's the culture in the press box, then shut the hell up. If you're in the stands, then you deal with that.
Well, and again, like lame jokes, like, oh, is it you find that in your iPad, Tills? It's like, all right, shut up.
He loves his iPad. I love my iPad too. So
yeah,
there you go. Okay, we're expecting Spanos to join us in about 14, 15 minutes from now. So before he comes on, why don't we get into the team and the season and what to expect? Obviously, we just kind of talked about it. They made the championship game last year and lost, which Maryland has a long history of doing. Thank God they do have the 2 recent titles. Otherwise, it would just be painful. But it's kind of weird. Final Four is like the bare minimum for Maryland. It's like if you don't make Final Four, you've had a failure of a season.
Pretty much. I mean, that's what happens. We talk a lot about being Maryland fans and having what expectations do we have for all of our sports programs, right? And we talk about what it must be like to be a blue blood. Well, Maryland has a couple of blue blood programs, throughout its sports, profile. And when they don't get to the Final Four, it's considered a failure of a season. It's the season that people talk about later, and they're like, oh yeah, and that was a season we only made the Final 8.
Mm. How long is the consecutive tournament streak right now?
It goes back to 2002, I believe. So it's just over 20 years. And Maryland has not had a losing season since it began sponsoring men's lacrosse. This is the 100th year of Maryland lacrosse as a varsity sport.
That is an incredible record.
Unprecedented, obviously, in the sport. I wonder.
In any sport.
I wonder.
To never have a losing, like for 100 years, that's impossible. Basically.
Never had a losing sport. They've had a couple of, 500 seasons, never finished with a losing record.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Maryland is a blue blood, and the expectation is to get to the Final Four. Are their rankings out yet? Do they have the preseasons? Where are they?
There's 2 of them. So in the media poll that just came out from Inside Lacrosse, they came out at number 5 preseason. And in the coaches poll from USILA, they're number 6.
And Notre Dame last year was an all-time team, and they had a lot of like 5th-year seniors, like COVID year seniors.
Yep, a lot of depth.
And that's all gone now. So they're going to be taking a step back, correct?
That's what's interesting about the whole sport. This is technically the last year of any COVID years. And it's normally either people who are redshirted. We'll talk about some of Maryland's inbound transfers where they had redshirted. They arrived, they redshirted as a freshman because of an injury. That happened to be the COVID year. So they're getting the bonus year. A lot of the Division III transfers all got kind of blanket 2-year COVID years. That's the last year of this. So what you're seeing is an era of a lot of very old teams now ending, which means this year is probably going to be pretty wide open nationally.
And do you think the Big Ten is the same? They're going to be wide open, or?
I think it's going to be how it always is. I think going into the season, they haven't done the preseason Big Ten poll yet. It's going to be Maryland. It's going to be Hopkins. It's going to be Michigan. And it's probably going to be Penn State. I think you're looking at Ohio State and Rutgers probably being 5th and 6th. But in the latest media poll, 5 of the 6 Big Ten schools are ranked in the top 20, led by Maryland.
Yeah. Which I guess the ACC probably has the same situation.
Similar. North Carolina is the outlier in that. So in the ACC, you got Notre Dame at number 1. You got Syracuse at number 2. You get Duke a little behind Maryland, UVA and Duke just behind Maryland, and then UNC kind of rounding up the end there.
Yeah.
2 power conferences.
Yeah, so they only have 5. They don't get an automatic bid because of that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. They need one more.
So players-wise, Who's coming back? Who left?
Well, you're talking about losing Ajax Zapatella, right? You're talking about losing the top player in the sport. He won that award, not the Tewaaraton, but there's another area of lacrosse. So he won that award. Ajax won that award as the top player, first time a defenseman had won the award more than 2 decades. So you lose him, and then you lose Luke Weirman at the faceoff. You lose perhaps, the best faceoff player, certainly in the history of Maryland.
Well,
but in terms of overall,
they do have Mitchell Lloyd in the pipeline.
They
so
do.
I'm very thankful for that. So there will be no drop off.
None. So Maryland's looking to having to replace 2 all-time program greats.
Yeah.
You lose Eric Molliver at attack. You lose Jack Corus, at midfield. So you lose some other kind of contributing players around the field. But they do bring back players, and then of course they're bringing back. They bring in not just one of the best freshman recruiting classes, but the top-rated incoming transfer class. So we can talk a little about some of those players as well.
Yeah, who are they?
So they bring in a couple of players. They bring in a guy named Bryce Ford out of Fairfield, multi-year starter at Fairfield, more than 100 career points. He comes in, can play attack, he can play midfield. A guy named Matthew Keegan, they bring in from Binghamton, 3-year starter at Binghamton. Again, more than 100-point scorer coming in. They bring in a real interesting guy out of Salisbury, perennial D3 power, a guy named Jack Dowd, midfielder, over 250 career points out of the midfield, player of the year, multi-year All-American, big guy, 6'4", 220-pound shooter. Bring him in from Salisbury. They bring in a guy from Stony Brook, Noah Armitage, another big guy, 6'4", 6'5", 230-pound left-handed midfielder. Again, more than 100 career points at Stony Brook. So they bring in a lot of senior players, but also guys that have scored a ton.
Well, that's good because they had problems scoring last year.
They did have problems scoring last year.
So
and hopefully this gives them more depth. One of the interesting things about this team is it's going to be fascinating to see how Coach Tillman and the offensive coordinator, Coach Phipps, they legitimately have 9 players at midfield who could conceivably get first and second line minutes. It'll be interesting to see if they do what Notre Dame did last year. One of the ways Notre Dame steamrolled, the rest of Division I lacrosse, they had 3 lines of midfield and they just ran waves of bodies at people with very little drop off. Makes me wonder if we're going to see kind of a similar thing with Maryland with some of the depth that they bring back. And
the 2 forwards that they brought in, and of course, our guest today, Eric Spanos. Who else are going to be the expected big goal scorers?
So Braden Urksa comes back.
Urksa.
He is the leading point returning scorer, and then Spanos at the midfield. You're going to you get Zach Whittier coming back. He's a multi-year player. So Maryland has they have some younger guys that have had lesser roles that are going to have to step up. There's a redshirt freshman named Tom Gravino who has made U.S. national teams, and he redshirted last year. So it'd be interesting to see if he steps up into the fold as well.
How about defense? You mentioned they're losing Ajax.
Ajax. They bring back Colin Burles, who's probably going to be their top cover guy. The Burles family, of course, is a legendary family name. Their father, Bubba, was a defensive player of the year at Maryland, a couple of decades ago. They also
he's the one that I was doing the shots with at the tailgate, and you were like, do you know who
yeah.
And I'm like, no.
You're like, no, man.
He's like, imagine if you were at a basketball tailgate and Juan Dixon came up and you started doing shots.
You're doing shots.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Multi-time player of the year. Yes. They also bring back Jackson Canfield, who last year was the first year at Maryland. He had transferred from Vermont. They bring back a guy named Will Schaller, who had extensive playing time as well. So that close defense looks like it's going to be pretty set, pretty intact. They bring in one of the top-rated long pole freshman recruits, a guy named Peter Lake out of Loyola Blakefield in Baltimore. Wouldn't be surprised to see him get some minutes. At the long stick midfield, you get Jack McDonald returning again, and you get a guy named AJ Larkin, who was the second LSM last year. So pretty good pieces on that defense. The defensive midfield is going to be a bit in flux. They bring back Eric Kohler. He's been a multi-year player. They also bring in the Division III defensive midfielder of the year, a guy named Zach Garno from Bowdoin College, who put up obscene numbers playing defensive midfield at Bowdoin, but multi-year All-American. So it's going to be interesting to see also George Stamos. He's the one that got that game winner at Syracuse. He comes back again. So they've got some good experienced pieces. It'll be interesting to see what kind of depth that they have.
And goalie?
Big question. Logan McNaney returns, although it appears he didn't really play much in the fall. He apparently had a hand injury that he was recovering from. And Maryland had a scrimmage this past weekend down at Duke. And, some of the word coming out of that scrimmage is the goalie position still a little bit unsettled. So Brian Rupel, who started for McNaney 2 years ago when he got injured, perhaps Brian Rupel ends up earning that starting spot again. Be interesting to see what happens.
Over the incumbent?
Over the incumbent.
That'd be crazy because he's pretty good.
He is pretty good. I mean, in Logan McNaney, you're talking about, the most outstanding player of the 2022 national title tournament.
Right.
There.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have recruiting rankings just like football and basketball.
Yep.
Where is Maryland rated their freshman class?
This first-year class came in, they were 5th in the country, headlined by 2 5-stars. A guy named Spencer Ford, who comes from a legendary family up in Baltimore. He was a 5-star attack recruit. And then that Peter Lake, the defenseman, he also was a 5-star recruit. A guy, 2 guys out of Gonzaga, out of my alma mater, Johnny Gardner and James Gardner. Johnny Gardner actually was a 5-star recruit as well out of Gonzaga. His cousin James is a short stick defensive midfielder. So they have depth. They also brought in a really good midfielder out of St. John's in the DC area. And it'll be interesting to see if he follows perhaps in the footsteps of a guy named Roman Puglisi, short stick defensive midfielder as well. So really good recruiting class. It's just hard to be a freshman and to break in that lineup at Maryland.
I was just going to say that. How often do you see freshmen actually come in and meaningfully contribute their first year? It's rare.
Rarely.
Yeah.
And especially at a place like Maryland where, you're sitting behind All-Americans and that culture and that program. It's tough. It's tough to break.
Our guest today, like I said, I was reviewing his history. He didn't play at all his first year. And each year he's stepped it up, and now to this year where he's expected to be.
Yeah, the funny story about that, a friend of all of ours, Bruce Posner. Bruce, a couple of years ago, was at the quarterfinal sites out at Ohio State when Maryland was making their run to the national title in 22. And one of an assistant coach after a game, a non-Maryland assistant coach, said, "Man, Maryland's so good that they get to redshirt a guy like Eric Spanos." He's like, "It's just not fair. It's just not fair."
Yeah.
That a guy like that redshirts.
Yeah. Yeah. And he came on at the end of last year, which is really great. One of the things you said that I took note of is that they had a secret scrimmage, and we all know that the secret scrimmage has its own sort of mystique, at least in the basketball world. So I guess it happens in lacrosse as well.
These weren't so secret. Some of the other programs will actually list their scrimmages on their website. So, for example, Maryland this coming weekend. So, we're a couple of days out from this as we're recording. Georgetown will be in College Park doing the second scrimmage of the preseason. Maryland was down in Durham, little rematch from the NCAA quarterfinals against Duke. From what I've heard from a couple of different people, did not go super well for the Terps. Duke came out really fired up, really physical. Maryland was having a really hard time addressing the physicality and a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy play out of Maryland's offensive end, which certainly didn't help. There's all kinds of guesses as to final scores. I'm not sure anyone really pays attention to the final scores. But one thing I do know is Coach Tillman's probably not super upset that they didn't play well, because it'll give him an edge getting them ready coming up to open against Richmond in 2 weeks.
Well, one of those players that Coach Tillman may be giving that edge to is our guest. There we go. Eric Spanos, you're muted. There you go, unmuted. How you doing, Eric?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. We just been previewing the team and the season, obviously coming off the loss in the national championship last year, which for most programs is great. For Maryland, it's one step short. How are you feeling about coming back after that into this season?
Yeah, it's definitely, kind of lit a fire under us in a lot of different ways. We're doing all the extra work we can. And one of our biggest things right now is we're just taking every day by day. So we show up with the same attitude, ready to go, do what you have to do to make our team better and yourself better. And like I said, just take it day by day.
So Eric, one of the things people may not know about you is you were one of the last 8th graders who could commit back before the NCAA changed their rules. And you were coming out of Malvern Prep in the Philadelphia area, and you committed to Maryland in 8th grade, and you stuck all the way through. What is that like, being 14 years old and thinking about where you want to commit and all those things?
Yeah, that process was definitely one within its own, and definitely appreciate the rule change because, being a 14-year-old, you're definitely very young at the time, but I wouldn't change any of it for the world. Ever since I was little, Maryland was always my dream school, and just even having the opportunity to make that happen was just something that even after I was committed, just pushed me every single day to actually achieve that goal and get to, the University of Maryland, be able to put the jersey on and play.
And you had some connections. So, it's not like Maryland was out of nowhere for you. So, you kind of grew up around Maryland as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so I was actually born here, and then I have a bunch of family in the Sykesville area and then also Reisterstown. So whenever we were up here, we try to get to some games every now and then. But yeah, I was definitely around the area a lot.
And then also Malvern Prep, for people who don't know, is one of the top lacrosse schools at the high school level. I think on your senior year roster, I think there were 30 players that ended up committing to Division I schools. What was that experience like, coming out of one of these just like machines in high school?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, playing at Malvern Prep, like you said, we had a handful of D1 commits, and you just get to go out there and play against them every day. It definitely was a great preparation for me making that transition into college, because I was playing against really good players in high school. And obviously when you get to a school like University of Maryland, everyone is that top tier player on their high school team. So I think that definitely helped me settle in my freshman year and just realize like everyone's that good when you get to a school like Maryland.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of the biggest things, just playing against that competition nonstop.
So that first year you come in, you actually redshirt. You were on that 2022 national title team. I think you might be the last of McNaney, Logan. You and Logan might be the last 2 people, from that team. What was that like, redshirting and going through that experience, seeing, Logan Wisnauskas and Roman and all those guys? You're on the team. Apparently, you were on the scout team, tearing everything up, and everyone's saying, wait till this guy makes it into the lineup. But what was that like, seeing that experience, on the team, but redshirting?
Yeah, it was honestly very, surreal at times. That some of the stuff those players were able to pull off was just mind boggling, and just being, there and a part of it and accepting that role of being a redshirt. And obviously you're going to be on the scout team. I honestly just took every week the same mentality. How can I help these guys be the most prepared on game day? And I was just willing to do whatever it was. If they needed me to stay after for an hour and get reps with them, I was willing to do it just so I could do my part and help out any way I could. And looking back on it, the other end of it is I got to play against, guys like Roman at a young Ajax, Matt Rahill, Bubba. I mean, the list could go on, Higgins, you name it. And so I was playing against all these players, and it just every single day I just felt like I was getting better and better, and they were pushing me as much as I was trying to push them, which was really good.
How do you – oh, Larry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, I checked out, I tried to search for you on Twitter X a little bit in preparation for this. I saw you did a video with First Class Lacrosse where we were going through a drill. I think it was for dodge and approach.
Yeah.
And I was noticing you got some sort of natural tendencies towards that coaching stuff. Is that something you think about maybe you want to do after your playing career is done?
Yeah, so I've always kind of gone back and forth with that, thinking about, entering the real world and pursuing job options in that aspect. And then also something kind of like Ajax is doing right now up at Dartmouth. It's definitely something I've been thinking about, but I also have another year. So fortunately I have some time to think about it, but yeah, I would definitely say it's in my thoughts for sure.
I live up here in the Philadelphia area, and my son actually played in the Rising Suns club program.
Yeah.
And so he was a lot younger. He was a lot younger, but we used to watch, like, anytime you were coming up through the ranks yourself. And so the Saturday practices, seeing the older guys, seeing you play. I'm at that age, seeing you play a couple games at Malvern Prep was kind of fascinating. You were talking about your role on the scout team. How do you now talk to the younger players? You guys bring in a great freshman class every year. How do you talk to them about maybe being in that same role?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely good because looking back on my freshman year again, I had those guys like Logan, Anthony DeMeo, and they were kind of mentoring me through it because they did it as well. And so now it's just honestly a very cool feeling to have that red shirt under my belt and be able to talk to these guys and just be like, guys, like, it's really worth it. You're trading your 18-year-old year for possibly a 23-year-old year. And just my biggest thing is I just try to make them see the bigger picture of it, because it's very hard at times to, be an 18-year-old and just be like, oh man, I'm going to sit on the bench the whole year. It's like, it's a complete opposite. You get to get better every single day, play against great competition nonstop. And then, your sophomore year, you're a freshman. So I just try to tell them all of that good stuff and try to give them a little bit of an older guy mentality on it.
You were talking earlier about sort of combination of what you just said. You played great competition, and earlier when you're in high school, playing a great competition. Looking at the schedule last year and then this year too, almost every single opponent is in the top 20. How do you you can't allow yourself a moment to relax against anybody. How do you keep yourself up every single time, every game, every practice?
Yeah, we honestly just have to keep in the back of our minds that, college lacrosse is just a one-goal world at this point. Any team can show up on any day, so we just really need to focus up every week. Doesn't matter who we're playing, what competition. We need to take every week the same and just have the same stride. So we start the week the same way, and then we finish getting ready for game day Friday, and we just need to, like I said, just be completely locked in no matter the competition. And yeah.
You talk about playing such a hard schedule, right? Like, Inside Lacrosse just released their preseason media poll. You guys are playing 5 teams, and you all are ranked in the top 10. You're playing 5 additional top 10 teams. You got 4 additional top 20 teams. You see the effect, the toll. Last year and during the Final Four weekend, you were out there like on one leg. How do you get through that grind physically?
Yeah, it's definitely a grind, but that's why we have such a hard fall. We put in all the extra work, whether you wake up on a day and you're like, I don't want to do it. You do it for that. You work. The second we get back to campus, we preach a lot is, we do all this for May. We're working nonstop, and we just have in the back of our mind that we're going to, at Maryland, your goal is to win the national championship, right? So you're going to need to be able to play those 2 games in 3 or 4 days. And so, like I said, we just preach all that extra work we do during the fall and even in the spring to get to that point.
Hey, Eric, there are 2 places on the lacrosse field called the X. Why is that? And what can we do about changing it? I don't like this.
I'm honestly not sure.
Like it doesn't make sense. How can there be 2 different? If I say he's at the X, where is he? Is he behind the goal or is he at the?
I don't know.
He's new, Eric, he's new to lacrosse. You got to.
I don't like
a break.
I don't like this.
My personal opinion would be that the person's behind the goal, but if you were to talk to a face-off guy, he'd be like, he's at the face-off X. So I really don't know. That's a great question.
Yeah, it doesn't make. Please talk to whoever you need to talk to about getting that changed.
Well, Coach Tillman, he chairs the rules committee. You can get those.
Oh, and let's talk to him.
Well, I want to ask a question about that though, because you talk about playing at X. High school, you play attack. First 2 years, at least, your redshirt freshman year and last year, playing midfield, moved you back to attack. That really really helped the offense find a better groove. What's the challenge there? Going from midfield to attack and back.
Yeah, one of the biggest things about our offense here at Maryland is we play a pretty positionless offense. And so my sophomore year when I was playing midfield, I got to learn the biggest difference is just learning the clears and the rides from being in an attack perspective versus a midfield perspective. And other than that, you kind of just, play in the offense and you could end up anywhere. So that was kind of the biggest thing is going sophomore year in midfield, learning how to clear the ball, how to ride the ball as a midfielder. And then even into my junior year last year, and then getting put down to attack, it was pretty seamless just because I was doing all of, kind of the heavy lifting down at attack or at midfield, sorry.
Yeah.
Eric, the last thing we do, we end every interview, we play fill in the blank. I'm going to ask you 5 rapid fire questions. You say the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
All right.
All right. The best lacrosse player in Maryland history is?
Jared Bernhardt.
The currently little-known player who will break out this season will be?
Let's go Eric Kohler.
The most painful place to get hit with a lacrosse stick is?
Got to be the wrist.
Okay. The biggest fish you ever caught was?
A striper.
I read your bio. All right. The player on the team you would least like to date your sister is?
I don't know. We have a lot of good guys, to be honest.
He copped out.
A lot of good guys.
Okay. Right.
But you're like, I still wouldn't want any of them to date my sister.
Yeah, I want to see which one.
No, I don't want any of them to, but we do.
See him throw somebody under the bus. All right. Hey, Eric, one more thing we ask if everybody comes on the show. Could you do us a favor and say, this is Eric Spanos, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
Yep. This is Eric Spanos, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
Hey, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck on the season. We're going to be following you, and we'll see you at the Final Four.
Yeah,
See you
awesome.
down there, Eric.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Take care, man. Have a great season.
Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Bye. There he was, Eric Spanos.
That was funny. He was like, I don't want to answer that question.
I know. Well, I did the same thing. I asked, it was a football player. I forget who it was. And they said Deshaun Jones. They actually said something.
Like without even thinking, there's like a Deshaun Jones. Like that was
Deshaun,
that is hilarious.
I forget who it was.
I wasn't going to ask him about the scrimmage. I bet he wouldn't have answered anyway. But we could have gotten something straight from the source. On that. See what he had to think. It'll be interesting because Georgetown, like a lot of teams, they scrimmaged Georgetown this weekend. Like a lot of teams, Georgetown lost a lot of those kind of super seniors, a lot of unknowns. But Kevin Warren is their coach, and he comes up through. He and Tills have been together way back when Tills was coaching Harvard. Kevin was his defensive coordinator. He spent time in College Park, so they're buddies. They always scrimmage. Maryland and Georgetown always scrimmage every year. And Kevin Warren, He's hilarious. He's the one last year during the Big East tournament. He was wearing the old school Georgetown starter jacket and like the old school starter hat on the sidelines. He's a real character. So if anyone's around College Park this weekend, you want to see a scrimmage, see Kevin Warren telling jokes on the sidelines. It's always a blast.
Will there be a tailgate?
I bet you there will be. If it's Maryland lacrosse, some parents will be out there.
Yeah.
Although they lose the RV this year.
No.
At least for a year. The Zappatellas, Ajax graduated.
They better recruit his brother just for that.
So his brother's up at Dartmouth, but he'll be back. He's going to spend his 5th year down in College Park. So we'll get Brian
just for one more year
back. Yeah, we'll get him back next year.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know. You're like, no RV. You're like, I don't know.
RV is awesome. They're playing music. They have that amazing setup. Like it's like everything you could put. It's a big like tent comes out like over the top, and there's like grills and like it's crazy. Anyway, yeah, the tailgate is awesome. So I say this all the time on the show, if you like football tailgating, go to this in the spring. It's like about 10 or 20% of the size, but like
get your fix.
It's the same thing. Yeah. And then you're rooting for a national title contender too. So, all right.
Added bonus, right?
Yes. So I'm looking at the schedule.
Yep. Let's do it.
Richmond win. Loyola, easy win at Loyola. Come on, please.
Then number 2, Syracuse.
Syracuse at home, piece of cake. At Princeton, Ivy League. Come on, get out of here.
Number 2, Syracuse. Number 4.
Yeah, but it's Ivy League. They'll beat them. All right, Notre Dame. Oh, revenge game. 5-0.
Number 1, Notre Dame.
At UVA, as we just talked about, they always beat UVA. Then the Big Ten teams: Michigan, Penn State.
They got Delaware. Home. You got Delaware. You forgot Delaware.
Oh, I forgot Delaware. Well, because it's Delaware. It's easy win. Okay. Michigan, Penn State at home, both at home, and then at Rutgers, at Ohio State, Johns Hopkins at home. All right. So realistically, what's your?
So DraftKings set their win total.
They have futures for.
Oh God, yeah. Oh,
I didn't
God.
know
You can do weekly. Oh yeah, they get spread. They get lines every week.
I didn't know that.
So Maryland's over under.
Let me guess. Can I guess?
Yeah.
9.5.
8.5.
Wow.
On that schedule, though.
That's low.
8.5, 12-game season.
Yeah. And they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 road games, all against good teams.
I mean, again, they're playing 3 top 5 teams.
Yeah.
Plus an additional couple of top 10 teams.
If they go 8-4, they still make the tournament?
Easily.
7-5?
Oof. 7-5. 7-5. They might have to win the Big Ten tournament if they go 7-5.
But 8-4 is easily, and 7-5 is no. That's
just because there's so few slots.
Yeah. So what's your prediction then? Right now, go on record.
I think we're going to see a 9-3 regular season.
9-3, and then Big Ten tournament.
I think they make it's kind of funny. They're so hit and miss on the Big Ten these days. Maryland's in this kind of interesting trend right now. They either win the Big Ten regular season and then drop, the first Big Ten tournament game, or they end up going pretty far in the Big Ten tournament. Big Ten tournament's always tough. And in fact, I think if you were to get most of the Big Ten coaches on True Serum, they would probably tell you that they don't really enjoy playing in the Big Ten tournament. I don't think they'll win the Big Ten tournament championship. I think they actually are going to win the Big Ten regular season title.
And then not the tournament, and then national tournament?
I think this is a Final Four team easily.
Easily.
Book your tickets, my friends. Book your tickets.
Where is it this year? Boston, right?
It's in Foxborough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Foxborough.
Yeah.
Too far.
Fly into Providence. Stay in Providence. Much better experience. Much better experience in Providence.
Yeah.
It's going to be. That schedule is killer.
Yeah, it is. Well, last year every single team was ranked, and it looks like there's a couple this year that aren't, right?
The only ones who are not ranked right
Delaware
now
and
are
Richmond?
Loyola, Delaware. Richmond's 20th in inside lacrosse. So
Okay.
Loyola, Delaware, and Rutgers. Rutgers is the only
Oh,
Big
okay.
Ten team not ranked.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've covered kind of most everything. You want to throw in a couple of sentences about the women's team at all, or?
Yeah, the women's team last couple of years have, by their standards, by their own, blue blood standards, they've not really lived up to their standards. Some of it could be, COVID years related, other teams loading up. You got a lot of universities are adding women's lacrosse. So Clemson has become one of these big schools now for out-of-state players to go to down at Clemson because of facilities and all that kind of stuff. Maryland's, preseason ranking right now, they're coming in at 10, and that is not where you normally see a Maryland women's program. A lot of question marks on offense. Their defense and goal play should be should be pretty settled and pretty firm. But the last few years, Maryland's offense, women's offense, has not been at its previous standard. A lot of questions as to whether or not now their offensive coordinator left to take the head coaching job at Georgetown. A lot of questions as to whether or not the new offensive coordinator will come in and maybe tweak some things and maybe see a little bit of a different offensive flow for the women. But, you expect the women's team to be in the top 10 all year.
And in the tournament, and hopefully a Final Four national title contender.
Hopefully.
All right. Everybody who's watched this show, the preview show the last 2 years, we do this segment where Tony is normally I have a game ending segment for Paul and Jeff, and it'll be some kind of game show type segment. But I don't know lacrosse very well, so we reverse it on the college lacrosse show. So Tony, here we go. Third annual time. You're going to ask me some lacrosse trivia. We're going to see how I do.
I mean, you've become more. I mean, you're not a novice anymore at this, Larry.
Probably not.
You've been watching enough now that somebody's. So I had to go real deep on some of these. All right.
Okay, that's intimidating, but all right.
Okay, what does a standing neutral grip refer to?
I mean, I don't know what that is, but my guess, obviously, a grip means how you hold the stick, a standing neutral grip. Is it when your hands are separated on the stick as opposed to right next to each other?
No, but I mean, you're right. It's about how the stick's being held. It refers to face-off play. So
okay.
A couple of years ago, the NCAA outlawed what is called the motorcycle or moto grip, where you looked like you were driving a motorcycle and you just flip your hands down. A standing neutral grip now is what the rules are. So one hand has to be up, the other has to be under, and you have to move your wrist in a different way. So now standing neutral grips are the rule for face-offs.
Okay.
See,
I'm
now
0 for 1.
Like now Mitch Lloyd Mafia, now you can have something to discuss with him.
Yeah.
There you
I'm
go.
gonna say, how's your standing neutral grip coming, Mitch? You want some playing time? Let's work on your standing neutral grip, buddy. Let's go.
All right. How many long poles are allowed on the field for one team at any given time? 4. Got it.
Boom!
Yes.
Let's go! Let's go!
Now, interestingly, goalies are allowed to have long sticks, but they're exempted from the count. So when you read the rules, it says outside of the goalie, you're allowed 4.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you have to have them, just
But
a max.
Obviously, you want your defenders to have long sticks.
But on offense, right? You don't
don't.
have a long stick midfielder. You
Yeah.
bring in a short stick, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, exempting the goalies. What are the 4 pieces of required equipment that all field players must wear? Now, I'm not counting mouth guard, okay? 4 pieces of lacrosse equipment that are required for all players on the field.
Well, let me say something, because the women's team require goggles, don't they? But men don't.
Right. But what's
Do
your
I
betting
get?
required?
Did I get a bonus point for that?
Well,
by
that
the way?
I'll give it to you. Judge
That's
says
pretty
it.
good. That's
That
pretty
is
good, right?
You're right.
Guys, women always had the goggles, and it's like, why are they all doing that? Because it's required. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Helmet,
Yep.
shoulder pads,
Yep.
gloves.
Yep.
I'm gonna say I'm torn between a jockstrap.
Arm pad.
Damn.
Now, what's funny about the arm pads
Ugh.
is most defensemen will wear these little tiny ones. They're almost like elbow caps, but they will shove them all the way up their bicep. So sometimes with defensemen, you don't even see the required equipment. Now, goalies have to wear a helmet, of course. They have to wear a neck guard. So they have to wear something to make sure a ball doesn't get at their neck. They have to wear gloves, and they have to wear a chest protector.
I feel okay about my performance on
Dude,
that.
3 out of 4 on that.
And especially, it's kind of obvious, but some of those are obvious. But also pulling out the goggles thing for the women's team, I think at least a half a point for that.
I'm going to give you credit for that. So right now you're 1.5 out of 3.
Okay.
We're digging that. All right. What is the I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Releasable versus non-releasable penalties refer to what?
When the other team scores, the player either gets released or not, depending on the kind of penalty.
There you go.
Come on. Let's go.
Boom.
Let's go. 2.5 out of 4.
I mean, you're rolling. You are rolling.
I answered that with confidence.
You did. I mean, you were like
in seconds too.
When you were like, come on, challenge.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
You're like, challenge me. All right. Last question. We'll have a bonus for you too. Last question.
Okay.
How big is a lacrosse goal? How many feet by how many feet?
I thought you were going to say field, and I was going to be so happy because I know that it's 110.
You know the field, yes.
The
goal.
field's 100. Yeah.
How many feet by how many feet?
Just longer than a football field. Because they have to because of the way it happens at Bird.
Yep.
Sorry, Maryland Stadium.
Yeah.
I'm old. Okay. Okay. The goal is. I'm just guessing 3 feet wide and 4 feet tall.
If it was indoor lacrosse, you might be on there. 6 by 6.
Really?
Yeah. It's that big. Yeah.
6 by 6?
Yep. It's that big.
It's a square?
Yeah. It's
I thought
that big.
It was taller than.
Yeah.
Wow, I was way off on. Oh man, I feel kind of bad about that one. Damn, I had the field though, 110 yards.
Yep.
All right.
You want your bonus?
Yeah, of course.
All right, so you were 2.5 out of 5, but these were a little more challenging. Like last year, I think I asked you what is warding, right? You could answer that one now, like a warding call. Right, Larry? You can answer that one now.
No, I don't remember what warding is.
Damn, should have asked it again. It's when a player uses his free hand to ward off. To
ward off. I mean, I was gonna guess that because but I don't remember you asking me that. But okay,
I did.
Yeah, you could have asked all the same questions. That's been hilarious.
If
you watch the video and see if I got better or not.
Larry, I thought about doing that.
That would be so funny.
Larry.
That would be so funny.
The bonus.
Okay.
True, false.
All right.
During not counting penalties, right? Because in penalties, people leave the field. True or false? You always have to have 10 players on the field at all times. True or false?
There's live substitutions. Are you counting that as part of this question as well?
Always, just true or false? You always got to have 10 people on the field at all times.
Because there's more than 10 at times when you're doing live substitutions because they're both in that. What's the zone called? The
substitution box.
Yeah, the substitution box. Let's see. You always have to have 10. You're asking the question, which makes it seem like it should be true, but it seems like if you want to have less than 10, you should be able to do that. Like, what's the problem? Like in most sports, the problem is when you have too many people on the field or the court. Like, I'm gonna say false.
There you go, Larry. You got it. Boom.
Boom.
And it's because of what you're talking about. That the way that they can sub, you can't have more than 10, right? So if you have too many players on the field, it's a problem. Well, what's interesting too, and for those of you who want to watch, some of the games, the jokes about John Tillman's iPad. One of the things that you'll see Maryland coaching staff do is if the ball is, let's say, on Maryland's offensive end, you will see one of Maryland's defensive players actually kind of come off the field into the substitution box and kind of look at an iPad from time to time and then go back on the field. So sometimes they won't have 10 players on the field because you can have people substituting in or out behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I feel pretty good about the way I represented myself.
You did.
3.5
out of 6.
And I brought extra information in the length of the field and the women with their goggles.
Larry, you are no longer a novice.
I'm not a novice anymore. I watched when I went to visit my son at Elon. I watched the Elon women's team play one time, and it's hilarious. When they're so psyched after they score and they slam their sticks to the ground because they have the rule where the stick has to get measured every time after every goal.
Yep.
And they're like, "Fuck yeah!" And they like dropping the mic or whatever. They like slam the stick to the ground every time.
It is fun.
So,
yeah. My favorite Maryland picture ever is when Maryland women in 2022 won the national title. There's a picture of their MVP, a goalie, Megan Taylor. The game was played at Hopkins, the championship game. She has just received the trophy, and you can kind of see some of her teammates behind her cheering, but everyone is holding up little Maryland flags. So it's this picture of her, the joy of receiving the trophy. You see the title trophy. You see her like this kind of like huge kind of smile. And then just the background is nothing but Maryland flags. My favorite ever Maryland photo. It's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, you should post that photo in the thread when we post this on the Maryland247sports.com message board. The other thing we'll post in that thread is the open doors for Eric Spanos. It's a lot of really weird letters, so I'm not even going to say it because no one's going to remember it. But we'll post the link to his open doors in there as well if you want to hook him up with some NIL. Eric Spanos, he was very good. He seems like a reserved kind of guy.
Yeah, stoic, huh? Very kind of a stoicism. A big guy too. I mean, like he's legitimately 6'4".
Wow.
230 pounds.
Yeah.
So he's got that kind of physical presence, but man, super well spoken, real kind of calm.
Yeah.
Real calm guy.
And expecting a big year. 40 goals.
Boy, it's gonna be hard for any Maryland player to score 40, I think, this year.
Counting
Because
there's so many.
Counting playoffs?
Whole season.
Will he hit 40? Let's go. Yeah. Let's say he hits 40.
I think he's getting 40. I'm calling it right now. And also, since we haven't done a lacrosse show since I got all these lacrosse bumpers, I actually played them on the regular show recently.
Yep.
Were you on it when I did that?
Yeah, that was funny.
Oh. Well, I got this one. Here, let's listen to this.
This is Brett Makar, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
Here we go. Hang on.
This is John Geppert, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
Boom. Lacrosse and my favorite.
This is Mitchell Lloyd's mom, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
Let's go, Mitchell Lloyd.
You also got Logan McNaney's brother, too.
Do I have that in here?
He was funny. Yeah.
I don't have it in here. How do I not have Logan McNaney?
It was at the tailgate that doing the shots with Bubba Burles.
Yeah. How did I not put that one in there?
He was funny, too. He was really funny about it. But being Logan McNaney's brother.
I mean, I can just play it into my mic here. Hang on.
This is Logan McNaney's brother. I have no goalie skills, and you're listening to IMS Radio.
I have no goalie skills.
Yeah, he's funny. He's
Yeah.
great. He's great.
All right. Well, there we go. That'll do it. Put a wrap on our annual lacrosse preview show. We've got like a little kind of niche cult following for this show. I think there's always, as is kind of the fan base, is like a little cult following for Maryland. And it's always fun. And I highly recommend going to the games, going to the tailgates. It's a lot of fun, and the
Like you
games
said,
are great.
You get to follow a winner.
Yeah, and they put everybody on one side of the stand, so it feels really packed. The rest of the stadium's empty, but you got 5 or 6 sections where they're completely full of people. So that's a lot of fun, and the family tailgate is great. And yeah.
No, Larry, man, thank you for thank you for always doing this. Larry's the non-rev champion amongst the
I have been
IMS
forever,
and
since day one
absolutely
of this show, and they make fun of me.
That's
fun of me.
That's just Paul.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, I used to I kind of play into it a little bit. I used to give women's golf updates.
Was it golf or tennis?
Golf.
Yeah.
And there was one named Juliet Vong Fumi, and I still remember to this day. And that was the funniest thing. And they had 2 different girls on their team named Ludovica, which is the funniest thing in the world. Ludovica Farina and Ludovica Scandrolio, I believe, were their names.
Jeez.
I still remember them.
Wow.
And yeah, so I've always been a big supporter of the non-revs and the women's teams and all of that stuff. So yeah. Anyway, somebody's got to win at Maryland because the football and basketball team aren't doing it.
Oh. Go Terps.
Boom. Little zinger at the end there. All right. Thanks, Tony. We'll post this. We're recording it on what's today? On the 21st.
Tuesday the 21st.
When is the first game?
February 1. They got a scrimmage this coming weekend, and February 1 they roll out.
About
Richmond.
10, 11 days away. I'm going to edit this, and we will get it up. Put it up this week.
Nice.
I think people like it. All right. Thank you guys very much. Thanks, Eric. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do that. We very much appreciate it. This is IMS Radio.